Pablo Solon, thanks for speaking to us. This time last year you were at the centre of a frantic negotiation in Cancun. What's different this time for you and in this process?
Well, it's the same movie. No, I call it the Great Escape 3 because it happened in Copenhagen, in Cancun, and it will happen here in Durban. What is happening? The richest nations are trying to escape from their responsibility to reduce their greenhouse gas emissions now. That is what's all about. What is going to come out of Durban? Very low pledges that will lead us to an increase in the temperature of more than 4 to 6 degrees Celsius in this century. That means that if now we are having 350,000 persons dying because of natural disasters that have to do with climate change, we're going to see that figure multiply by, who knows, 4, 5, 6 times. It's really a genocide and an ecocide. And here the discussion is on the form, not on the substance. The form is it going to be in KP? Is it going to be a new legally binding instrument? But the real essence of the negotiation should be how much rich countries are going to reduce their greenhouse gas emissions in this decade, not after 2020. Because if we lose this decade, we're not going to be able to recover it in the next decade. And I'm very, very worried because this has happened in the 3 last COPs. The pledges are too low. They are not putting humankind and nature in a safe zone.
And with an emissions peak in 2020, we'd be looking at a climate catastrophe, but that is what the US has on the table here. Do you think they've given up hope for saving the small island states, the vulnerable countries? Do you think they've given up altogether?
I think they are thinking more on their internal politics, the coming elections and how is their economy. But they are forgetting that if we lose this decade, we're going to lose it not only for the small island states, not only for Bolivia that's going to lose its glaciers and its mountains. We're going to lose it also for the United States, that is going to suffer more hurricanes Katrina, because that is what in a scenario of 4 degrees Celsius means, that we are going to see more natural disasters all over the world, even in the US. Of course, what is very bad is that the first ones that will suffer is going to be Africa, because an increase in the temperature of 4 degrees Celsius for Africa means 8 degrees Celsius, because it's already a very warm, hot continent.
And do you see any potential for substantive progress here?
In the rest of the hours, absolutely no. I see that what is going to happen is the same tragedy that we have seen. I think that in the coming future, the only possibility to change the course of this negotiation is if we are able to build a global movement like Occupy Wall Street, with the Indignados, with social movements, trade unions, with the climate justice movement, that come together and say, hey, the 1% of the population cannot put the 99% of the population in a situation where we don't have jobs, we don't have social security, but we also don't have a future for our children, because climate change is going to bury us all.
You say that you anticipated tragedy here. Last year you were a lone voice in Cancun trying to prevent that from happening. Do you anticipate the likes of Bolivia, Venezuela standing up here again?
I hope so. I hope so, because if the agreement is worse than the Cancun agreement and is worse than Copenhagen, the Copenhagen Accord, you have to be coherent. If you say one thing, then and nothing changed, you have to be even more stronger than that.
And can you just give us an idea of what will be happening in those negotiation halls now? You've been there, you've been at the business end of things. What's going to be the atmosphere and what's going to be happening through the course of tonight?
Well, if you see what is happening now, you see the daily program, there are the formal meetings. Those meetings are almost empty. They're only giving speeches. You have the informal meetings where most of the delegations are going. There, in reality, the negotiation is not even there. The negotiation is in very small rooms where only some of the delegations are there. and they are discussing the text that's going to be put on the table in the coming hours. So in reality, we are seeing what happened in Copenhagen. In Copenhagen, between 30 to 40 delegations came together and said and wrote the draft of the Copenhagen Accord, and they presented us at 2 a.m. in the morning, the day after the day that it should have finalized COP15, and they said you have 16 minutes to read it and come back, and we are going to adopt it. So this is what's happening now. The real negotiation is hijacked by some of the main countries that are the main responsibles of global warming, and those that are the victims are waiting outside trying to find out what is happening in the real negotiation.
Speaking to some of the developing country delegates here, they've said they're relatively comfortable with the transparency of these negotiations. Do you think that they're naive?
Absolutely. I mean, transparency, we will see between the text that has been presented 2 days ago, or the text that has more than 130 pages, and what we are going to see. We'll see that most of the proposals that come from developing countries are going to be erased. But the key proposals that come from developed, rich countries are going to remain, and they are going to guide the outcome of this COP17.